Hello, everyone, and welcome to the UploadVR Gamescast. Harry Baker, you can already see is here because he came into my shot right at the start of the show.
Did I? I'm peeking
I
into your
can't
shot. Sorry about that.
believe you just did
I
that.
just ruined that. Yeah.
I had my whole thing set out. I was going to say
Yeah,
hello.
sorry.
It was going to be lovely. Then I was going to introduce you all nice and formal, but no, you couldn't
Seat
wait.
shifter. I have to move. I have to move around.
How are you, Harry? How are you?
I'm good. It's been a busy week, but I'm good. Lots to discuss. Lots of things I'm keen to discuss on the show. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm a little frazzled by another long week of VR news and getting back out there in the world after the COVID pandemic, or towards the end of the COVID pandemic, I should say.
Yep.
What we hope is. But it's okay. I've got a Kiwi head strap on my Rift now. Not my Rift, my Quest.
Oh,
and
yes.
It's quite comfortable.
Have
you got any of the Kiwi stuff?
Oh no, I have a alternate one from I think VR cover, which I don't really use. But is the Kiwi one like an Elite one, or is it a?
Yeah, it's like it feels a little cheap, but it's basically an Elite strap. With a bit
cheap
more
enough
padding.
To snap in two, or
yeah,
on the side.
No, it's an Elite strap that hopefully doesn't break.
Yeah,
No,
that's
I've
good.
also got some controller grips for it, which I quite like. I'm going to be doing a review on all of this. This is why I haven't.
Yeah.
But it's nice because you're in the podcast in our virtual studio. If you're listening to the podcast, we are actually in VR right now, talking to each other as if we were in the same room. But I'm in the UK. Harry's in Australia.
Amazing.
But being in here for like an hour with the Quest 2 on usually can be like towards the end. You're like, take this thing off.
I got a nice print mark on my face at the end of the sessions. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. We are supported by our fantastic members. They are Lucas Longacre, Anthony Mann Wexford, Robert Canonas ×2, Handy Panama, Daniel Barwin, Jerome Houston, Andrew King, Skiva 007, Sexy Bicycle, Matthew May, Rick Tet, 360 Pickleball, Smash Reality, Adam Hartzell, and John Westra. Thank you so much for your support. As always, it means the absolute world to us. Harry.
I give that reading of the names this week, I reckon, a 6 out of 10.
It wasn't very good.
Last week was quite good. Last week you had the groove. I remember you even said that. This week, that's okay. There's always something to work on.
I do not have the groove this week.
You don't have the groove.
The groove is absent from my body. So let's continue to stumble through this grooveless podcast with the news. First up, we're going to talk a little bit about Little Cities, which is getting some free content updates after it launches on 12th of May. Today or earlier this week, Endreams confirmed that a free content update in June will add hand tracking to the game, which is
very
exciting.
Surprising
exciting
too. Actually, I did not expect that at all. In fact, did they even say at one point, no, there's no? I could have sworn.
I think maybe they gave us a no hand tracking at launch kind of answer in that very knowing way. But
yeah.
I'm surprised too. But also, if you've seen any Little Cities gameplay, you'll know that the UI is like these bubbles above your hand as you're playing, and like you press a bubble to select a road, and then like you aim your controller down at the ground and do like a point and drag thing to like build a road.
Yeah.
So actually, if you look at all those different things, I think they actually work. They could work pretty well with.
It almost looks like it may have been designed with that, as an intention.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got an image here. I finally got an image up. You can actually see it's one of those games where you do have hands and you kind of turn your hand like a palm up, and there's little bubbles. You can use a pointer with the controller. You can point and pop them, so to speak, from afar, or you can use your actual like finger. But I think it'll work really well. I think it's also a slow enough pace of game that it has good potential for it. I think where often these games go wrong with hand trackings when they're really fast paced, and it's got to be really accurate, really fast.
Yeah,
and so I think this will be a good contender.
Yeah, it's the thing that it's going to have to work out right is so you kind of grab the environment to move around in the game with the controllers, right?
That's true.
And then you use two different controllers to size up and down, scale up and down, a little like if you've ever tried to move around in Demio or something like that, it's
Yeah.
basically the Demio control
Yeah,
scheme.
it is.
And I'll be very interested to see how they do that. Is it going to be like you have to like make a fist to like grab and pull through
Yeah,
the
what was
environment, and
I
then
was playing
scaling? How's
something
that going to work?
hand tracking recently where I did like a oh, you know what it was? It was Cubism has that gesture to bring
Oh
the
yeah,
pieces towards you, where you
yeah,
like do a little like pulling kind of motion and it brings everything closer. I can imagine they could do something like that where you can kind of do a pulling thing and then direct it or something.
yeah.
But yeah, that'll be interesting. But that's the only thing I can really think of that's not kind of natively, you know, almost designed for it. The rest of it seems
Yeah.
very. I just also do worry about incorrect placement if it jitters and all of a sudden you build a thing, because hand
Oh,
tracking
that's very true. Yeah.
has that annoying thing where you got to press something and then it just like because you move your hand when you press it, so that could get potentially frustrating. But I think it'll be
Yeah.
overall a good addition.
I mean, this has to be one of the kind of 2.0 hand tracking update games that we
Yeah.
heard about like late last week or early this week, right?
Mhm.
So hopefully you're gonna go in with a lot more stability in the first place, is
Yeah.
what you'd hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And actually
then
on that note with stability, because we haven't put this in the running order, but it is something that I have tried. I haven't tried a lot of other stuff yet because stuff needs updates. Cubism has the new hand tracking um,
yeah,
2.0 thing, and at first I was like, "Wow, this is a huge difference." After a bit more playing, I was like, "Okay, this isn't like complete." I think originally I was like, "This is night and day." It's not quite night and day, but it is way more confidence picking up things, which I imagine will be similar with this
yeah,
placing things. I felt like I could just go and grab something, and I always knew I was going to grab it, even if it was still a little bit jittery and stuff at times. It just felt more reliable than it ever had been. So I think that'll help
yeah,
with that for sure.
yeah. It's. I mean, we could have spent a lot more time talking about the hand tracking stuff today. It's just I think we still need
Still
to
waiting
get
on
to
a
the
few more
point.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, still waiting on a few more things. I mean, like, hopefully Cambria is going to make the tech better, which will like bleed into Quest 3,
Mm-hmm.
maybe, whenever that hits. And also, like, as a content library, that's kind of why I'm excited about the Little Cities thing. Is this is one of the first games, as you were saying, where I can actually picture it being at the kind of pace where it's got a lot of depth and it works,
Mm.
as opposed to like, I don't know, like
Yeah.
they did it for Vacation Simulator,
Yep.
and that was like purely experimental, and they were like, okay, this is good enough to ship. And it's like, yeah, but game also wasn't designed for the ground up for this.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of felt like your hands were a replacement for controllers, which is never the best feeling, as opposed to if you'd gone in and made all those interactions unique to hand tracking. That would be
Totally.
really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then there's in July, I want to say, they're going to do a free cosmetics update for Cities 2, which I think is cool. I guess I don't really know what cosmetics would mean in a building sim just yet. Like, can you like give a theme to all the buildings, or are there just new
Yeah. I don't know.
buildings that look
It'd
a little
be
different?
be interesting if they give you options to like maybe make areas look a certain way or look like almost like districts of a city so you can have more control. As I think we'll speak later, this is definitely more about like this game is the one that is definitely more like aesthetically pleasing, but also just I
Mm,
don't know. There's something. It's kind of cutesy, and even just beyond the art style, the way that things are flying around you, and it's very kind of grounded in the way that it uses the art style. So I can imagine them kind
mm,
of being like, yeah, you can make the buildings look like futuristic, and you can have a futuristic island, and But I don't know. It'd be interesting. I
yeah,
don't know what they mean when they say cosmetics. Usually, I think of skins and stuff like that.
yeah,
So
same.
yeah,
Yeah, well, we'll see what's afoot. Little Cities is out on May 12th, as you just alluded to. Cities VR is out today, and we're going to be talking about that. It's going to be an interesting discussion. We're going to talk
mm,
about it in a little bit after we get through the news. But let's move on with the news, and we're going to be talking about last week's announcement of Ghostbusters VR. We've had a couple of
yes,
things confirmed since it was announced at the Meta Showcase. Firstly, it is indeed a launch exclusive to Quest 2, with Endream saying that they'll talk about other platforms at a later date. So to me, that said, yeah, it's coming to
yeah.
Quest 2 first. And then,
That's kind of the
let's be
standard
honest,
now, isn't it?
it's yeah, it's coming to everything else, but we
Yeah.
can't talk about it until the contract on Quest is up or whatever.
hmm
And then also it's also been confirmed that it's not like a direct sequel to Ghostbusters Afterlife, the movie. It's its own
Mm.
thing where you're off in San Francisco setting up your own Ghostbusters HQ. Which I guess I never really wondered if it was going to be
No, I
a
was going to
sequel to
say,
Afterlife.
did anyone think that it would be? Because I certainly
But
didn't.
I guess that there's the thing about it is Sony Pictures have done like one other giant full story game, which was Groundhog Day, like Father Like Son, which was
Mm,
meant to be a sequel to
that's true.
story. So that was quite interesting. But yeah, this seems to be its own thing, and like just get away from the canon
Probably
of
for the
the
best.
movies. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I think so. Also, probably for the best because I fell asleep in the half an hour in the middle of Ghostbusters Afterlife. So I have patchy knowledge on of what happened in that movie. But yeah, no, I think this is that's kind of the vibe I got from this anyway. That it was its own little
Yeah.
like we're just using the IP to make a ghost hunting kind of game that is related to Ghostbusters, but really is it's one of those kind of
Yeah.
IPs where you can do that.
And they said like it's a safe assumption that character customization will be in there as well. And I think that's
Mm,
usually not that big of a deal. But again, as if you're like personalizing and building your very own Ghostbuster
yeah,
outfit, I think that's got a lot of potential. Like you can see the
I
different colored uniforms and hats and stuff
yeah.
in the trailer.
I'd like to see to that extend too to like kits that you carry in that like before you almost do like a run,
Mm.
you plan with your whoever you're playing with who's got
Oh
what,
yeah,
certain things are only good for
yeah.
certain situations, and you have to kind of think about how many people you've got, what you're taking in, what you think
So it's
might
like
be there. I
a
think
class
that'd be
based
kind of
thing
cool.
almost.
Yeah, like almost like you have like classes with different weapons and stuff, and you can maybe have different, I guess, profiles with different, that'd be kind of cool. I think to give it a
Yeah,
bit more like
that's one.
depth of. Go on.
That's one of those things where the more you talk about it, the more you're like, man, this game, if they do it right, this game could be
Yeah,
absolutely phenomenal. I
yeah,
think, like, as you were saying, like you fell asleep in the movie. Neither of us are big Ghostbusters fans, but if first of all you just think, oh man, like holding a proton pack in VR,
mm,
um, that is actually like, even
yeah,
though I don't like the series, that is a cool experience that I would like to have.
yeah, totally.
And then you can just think of all the different, especially because it's co-op. I mean, like 4-player co-op, Ghostbusting is like the Ghostbusters dream, I suppose.
Yeah,
And there's
exactly.
so many directions they could take it in. But yeah,
And it seems like one of those games too where they could, if they do it right, which is a big if, have a really solid base that then you carry forward for like generations of headsets, right? Like it's that
yeah,
kind of I don't know, it's a very concept that you could take very far and expand and update and put on every headset for the next, 5 years or
yeah,
something easily.
exactly. Yeah,
So
you could just keep rolling with it, couldn't you?
yeah, yeah,
Which, yeah, again, I'll be very interested to see if they do. Like, yeah,
because it could
if
go
there's
the
any kind
complete
of
other
like,
way and be a like
yeah,
complete, not very good, cheap, like not cheap
yeah,
money wise, but
exactly.
just cheaply made, like not as kind of as in depth as you would want. I could totally see it going that way too. So yeah,
Yep, you're totally right about that. We'll have to see. Again, still no actual like idea of when this one's releasing. But
oh,
hopefully it's
actually
not too
though,
soon.
someone did clarify. A couple of people clarified in the comments last week that because we were saying, oh, what was this whole Oculus thing
Yeah.
of the disclaimer of within this year or whatever they said. The wording was within the next year, I believe. So
So
not
it could be early
necessarily,
Q3, early
yeah,
23.
not necessarily this year, but within a year. So I guess from April to April. So that's, I
Yep.
guess, yeah. But as we said, that could change. That wasn't a very,
Yeah.
it was a very much like it's all coming out
Yeah.
now, but it might not. So yeah,
Well, yeah. I mean, everything else said 2022.
everything.
So
Yeah,
I guess like a
yeah.
year from. That's the kind of marketing thing we've always been talking about. Like reveal your
hmm
game anywhere between a year
Yep.
to 6 months before it launches, and then have a proper campaign to talk about it and actually drive up hype. So if I would hope that it's like a year out, basically,
Yeah,
or
you would think so.
if not a little less. Yeah.
Yeah.
Moving on. Interestingly, after the Meta Showcase, we got what
Mm.
looks like to be somewhat verified, somewhat
somewhat
I know,
unverified, somewhat verified.
a bit of a pinch of salt here, and that looks
Yeah.
pretty solid there of Assassin's
Uh-huh.
Creed leaks.
Yeah.
So I think it was, I can't remember the name of the publication, but a publication first came out saying Assassin's Creed VR is called Assassin's Creed Nexus, citing sources close to the project. It's a linear level-based game in which you play as different assassins throughout the series.
Yep.
And like you use like there's like the usual combat, there's stealth mechanics, everything like that. And then following on from that, someone took to Reddit and posted what they claim is a QA build of a menu for something called Assassin's Creed
Yeah.
Nexus as well, which is just a menu and could easily be mocked up
Could easily.
within,
But
but it's,
it looks.
I mean, it's Ubisoft.
It wouldn't surprise me if it.
Yeah.
They've done a pretty decent job. If it is a mock-up they've done in like After Effects or rendered their own thing, then they've done a pretty good After Effects. They would have had to make their own thing, I guess. But yeah, it's. I could totally see this being real. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I asked Ubisoft, and they said we don't comment on rumor and speculation. And to me, it looked more.
Yeah.
It was more one of those things where it's like, if it was fake, I'm pretty sure you would have been like, "That's fake."
You would have said no, it's fake. Yeah.
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 So that's one of the tough things about it. But what do you make of this? What do you make of it not being an open world Assassin's Creed game like the series is so traditionally known for? Do you think that's a disappointment or a?
I was not surprised at all by that. I don't know. I didn't really expect it to be an open world game. Seemingly lots of other people were. But to me, that made perfect sense when they were like, oh, it's a couple of it's like a stealth game with levels. Because the thing is too, you have to change, even though all of the Assassin's Creed games have been open world, except for like the smaller spin-off ones, you have to, it's a VR, it's a different thing. I didn't expect this to be like a huge Asgard's Wrath level of like huge amounts of content that goes forever and you can do whatever, even if it wasn't open world. I didn't expect it to be like big. This seems like exactly what I would expect a stealth game with, like, 10 or 20 levels, different people, different settings. I think the real test of whether like people will be happy with it and whether, to make up for it not being open world is how open the levels actually are, whether you could do them again and play them different ways, whether, how many things are hidden in them, whether knowledge of the level kind of, will improve subsequent playthroughs, that kind of thing. That's to me where I'm like that it needs to have depth to the environments and the levels. Then if it's like 16, I want like a really solid stealth game where, to me, I think of like Dishonored or stuff like that, where, you can play it a ton of different ways, different combos of stuff. I'm expecting little Dishonored kind of, linear stealth levels. That's what I don't know. Is that what you thought it would be like, or were you expecting open world?
I think that hits. Well, now that we've heard this rumor, that's what I would expect, and I think the Dishonored and Deathloop comparison like hits the nail on the head of what I would want to see. Right? Like, it's not open world, but you do have like all these multiple paths through each environment that, depending on your play style, you can choose any one of them, or depending on how much you explore, you can choose any one of them. And I think you're right. I think if they do pull off these kind of open feeling larger levels, and like you said, I think there's plans to be 16 of them or something.
Yeah.
Then I think that is a much smarter move than trying to cram an open world, especially Assassin's Creed open world, which, let's be honest, just wouldn't happen on Quest and won't happen on Quest for a long time. Like, that's not just about the idea of having the size of a world and being able to go anywhere in it and then having all the kind of collectible missions. There's also just, I feel like designing an open world for an Assassin's Creed VR game would just also be a fundamentally different and more challenging experience, because you're not always going to be jumping on your horse and zipping to and fro, and you can't have
undertaking, like amount of people wise too. I would not expect there to be. I expect there's a lot of people working on this game. I don't expect there to be the same amount of people as like working on a regular Assassin's Creed game. I don't think it would be even close to equivalent. In which case, I wouldn't expect that from this game, right? Yeah.
because what on a bigger title, what Ubisoft will do will be there's a primary developer and
Yeah.
then there's like 10 other studios making
Yeah.
assets for it or whatever. I
Yeah.
think this is just. I want to say the Red Storm guys in Germany. I think it's just them. Maybe they have another team in England as well, based on the hiring stuff. But
And
yeah,
I imagine there's a lot of crossover too. They're using stuff obviously probably from the series and
yeah, for
assets or
sure.
whatever. I imagine
Yeah,
there's a
that's
lot
very
of
true.
yeah.
And yeah, so I just if this is it, and the report also said it's meant to be out in 12 months. So that's again another thing of like, if
Yeah.
you're still aiming for that, why didn't you show it at the showcase, guys?
If they're QAing this, if this is someone testing the game, play testing it, presumably it is in a playable state. Why do we not get like one level run through? Again, we said, we wanted something that was like 10-minute run through of
Yeah.
something Bonelab. Like this would have been just
Yeah,
cut
that
to
would have been
black,
great.
fade in, and then don't even say it's Assassin's Creed. Just let people figure it out.
Yeah, that would have been awesome.
And just run through one of these 16 levels. So I don't know. Yeah, hopefully soon. Maybe Connect.
Yeah, maybe Connect. That definitely seems, or maybe maybe this summer, like maybe Ubisoft will have it in one of its own digital shows or something
people
like
said that in the comments too. A lot about the last week they were going, oh, maybe it'll just be in the Ubisoft showcase or whatever. Yeah.
So I think it's probably a safe assumption from this that of the two, Assassin's Creed is what we're going to get first, and then maybe the Splinter Cell game comes later. Which I hope is the case, because kind of like I am a big fan of Splinter Cell. I really don't care about Assassin's Creed that much, so I would like to see them get the Assassin's one out there, learn whatever they've got to learn from it, and use that to make the Splinter Cell one better. Yeah. Because I do think that's the one with the real potential. I do think this has real potential. I think there are some things that are core to this series, like even the combat in Assassin's Creed was always that kind of like Batman Arkham Asylum kind of thing of counter once, then time your attack back and everything like that. And I do think there's room for that to work well in VR. I mean, that's the big unsolved thing still, and the big question about Nexus would be how the combat is going to work. Is it going to be wee waggle sword combat, or are they going to come up with something, I don't know, like Until You Fall, or potentially more physicsy on the Bonework side or something like that? That'll be a big thing, because again, you don't have to worry about that in Splinter Cell. It's just guns and bopping people on the head.
Yeah. I also wondered, just locomotion. This is a big game. This is going to make people sick. There was the leap of faith description, I think, in that report saying you can do that. And I'm like, that would be sickening to a lot of people. I don't know how that's going to work. But, let's see what happens. That's just nauseating is probably the nauseating.
One of those.
They hate it so much. They're sickened by the leap of faith.
Ban this game. Yeah. That and again, the report did mention that like it favors like a teleport system, and because of that, like and you're just leaping between shadows and stuff like that. There's like a sound meter that will sound off if you move too close to an enemy, which I don't know, man. That sounds a little like that's going to be choppy and unfair and annoying. But we haven't seen it in
see how it
play.
goes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Moving on, Bonelab may end up using a 120 hertz refresh rate on Quest 2, which is something that Brandon from Stress Level Zero, Brandon Latch, talked about last week on Twitter. I heard that and I was like, what? Really? How? Like, that's absolutely crazy to me that we're
baby.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, if he ends up applying it, because they haven't been using. Is it ASW? Do you want to
yes,
say that?
But that's the only way they would get to 120 hertz, basically.
Yeah.
Is through using that.
And in the tweet, he said, "Oh, we haven't actually been using that yet, but we'll see. Like, we've been targeting 90." He said, didn't he?
Yeah.
So we can see if 120 gets them there. If that happened, this game is going to be such a phenomenal powerhouse for Quest 2 if they can pull off all of this. Like, obviously, this is PC footage that we have on the screen right now, so it's not going to look this good. But if the gameplay can stay intact and the performance can be really good, then it's going to be it's going to be the game where it's like, no, look at what Quest 2 can do, basically, right?
I mean, even 90 at this point, I think is pretty impressive. I'm not even sure what I played the original Boneworks on. It was a pretty it was making my PC whine pretty hard. I don't think it was
Yeah.
a solid 90. I think it was either variable, gone up and down, or around 60 or 70 or something. I think it might have been 70. Actually, it was the original Quest, so I think it would have been 70. Yeah. So 90, I think, on standalone, even if that's what we get, is pretty good. But it'd be interesting to see if they can use if they can use ASW to get to 120. Because that would be so cool. Because the only thing I've really played in 120 properly is 11, which just feels butter smooth. That makes it feel like real life, because there's no haptic needed or anything. You're just hitting a ping pong ball, so it feels real amazing. So I'd be very interested to see what that feels like at 120.
Yeah, I need to go in and try 11 because I don't think I've done any 120 hertz. It's one of those things again where I guess I would have to be really paying attention to know the difference in a way, right?
You think that, but then you go up to 120 and you're like, oh, I can. Just
Real
feels
life!
a little bit.
Whoa, I'm here!
Yeah, I'm like, whoa! No, it just feels a little bit. Those extra 30 frames, man. My eyes can't see them technically, but man, you can feel them.
Yeah. No, I'll definitely try it for sure.
Yeah.
Still 2022, still nothing new to share on Bonelab. Sorry, but be patient. It'll happen. There's only like 6 months left of the year. Final story of this week is an exclusive trailer debut that we had for a game that we first announced at the UploadVR winter showcase called the Chewlers. We had a really cool cinematic trailer for this co-op tower defense game, basically, released this week. Whereas we did see gameplay of it the first time we talked about it, and it's 4 people standing on top of a tower, taking down these armies of blue minions, basically. But the studio, Animatron X, actually has its background in animation, and that really shows in this trailer.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a really good CGI trailer.
Yeah. Still no actual release date for the game beyond summer, which will be an early access release. But if you haven't been to Upload to check this out, we would definitely recommend it, because I think this is one of the more fun, interesting trailers we've seen in the VR landscape recently.
Definitely. I think at first I thought when I saw the thumbnail and this, I couldn't remember which one it was, and I thought it was the other one with little red minions in the Jeep, shooting stuff. I can't remember. Yeah, and I was like, oh, is it that game? Yeah. And then I was like, no, it's not that one. It's a different one. Oh, I remember this one now. But this looks really good. Love a good tower defense game. I'm keen to try this out.
Yeah, this is one of those things where everyone kind of looks at it and says, oh, it's just another wave shooter. And I'm like, yeah, but it is a co-op wave shooter.
Yeah.
With upgrades and stuff. And, we have to remember that when they're done right, wave shooters are really, really fun. So
I feel like to a lot of the other co-op shooters or games that I consider playing with my housemate and friends require a lot of room. Even just other shooters, you both need a play space. Whereas this, if it's kind of tower defense and you're kind of stable in one spot, I could maybe get away with putting it in a similar kind of space. And to me, that's kind of appealing, of going, oh, we can kind of stand in the same area because we're not going to be moving very much. It's just kind of aiming on the spot. I don't know if that's what it'll be like, but I find that kind of appealing, not having to have two separate kind of full play spaces, big area.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think for me, it's going to be all about that kind of upgrade path, the persistence of that upgrade path, and is there going to be a campaign that gets increasingly harder? And that's what's interesting.
Different
for
modes,
me. But
different stuff. Give me
for sure, and how inventive you can get with the weapons and stuff like that. But I'm still kind of quietly encouraged by this. I know it's it's not cool to wave shooters at the moment, but
no, I think this looks good.
I hope it works out.
Yeah.
Moving on from the news, it's time for our only impression/review coverage of the week, which, as you'll probably know, because we've been talking about it quite a lot over the past couple of weeks, Cities VR, an adaptation of the City Skylines game, is releasing for Quest 2 today. It's developed not by the original developer, but by Fast Travel Games, who you'll know for Apex Construct, Wraith, The Oblivion, and The Secret Tale of the Stolen Pets, The Secret Life of the Stolen... No, I'm thinking of The Secret Life of Pets.
Secret... Oh, now you made me confused. I know the one you're talking about.
Anyway,
Pets
it's no
game.
point.
Yeah.
And also, they worked on budget cuts too.
Yeah.
So this is it's not a port of Skylines. It is a kind of, I call it just a VR spin-off. It's trying to do all the same things, but
Yeah.
compact on a Quest thing. It's been the topic of much conversation between me and Harry, not just because it's coming out, but because it's had this close side-by-side rivalry with Little Cities, which we talked about earlier. And I think early on in those discussions, we kind of assumed Cities VR would be the one that like kind of walked home with the prize of the better of the two,
Mm-hmm.
far and away. Harry, having now played the game a fair bit, do you think that's the case?
I don't think so. I really enjoyed my time with Little Cities. I think when it comes down to it, there's a fair few things with this one that I find difficult or problematic, let's say. But I think really, which we've discussed off air, the interaction in Little Cities is fantastic. It's like the way you do things, and the it has a real feeling of weight to everything you do, and you're popping the bubbles and you're selecting things. And I also got really good with that game after playing it for a bit. Even just after like a level or two, at almost doing it like without thinking. You're just kind of where everything is, and I think that is an underrated key element of these games on any platform. Even when you play a simulator game on PC, I think you start to like quickly click things, and you're quickly performing actions, and then
Yeah.
you get into like a rhythm of it. City Skylines, or not City Skylines, well, Cities VR, the version of City Skylines.
This Cities.
Yes, this city game. Man, where to start? While we're on the controls, I mean, the controls are pretty just not intuitive. Doesn't feel like they've clearly tried to put effort into making it like native to VR and feel good, but I think just it does not work. As you can see on the screen here, if you're watching the video, your left controller, the thumbstick, basically you have to hold the grip button while you do this, which is very strange. You hold because there's nothing on the controller normally, so why would I hold the grip anyway? Oh, I guess it's because you can move on that button as well. This is the problem. Anyway, thumbstick, you swivel the thumbstick around with the grip button to like go into sub menus. So, there's roads at the top, utilities at the bottom, that kind of thing. You swivel it around, select roads, then you swivel it around to select which type of road, then you swivel it more and it's just all this thumbstick selection, which is so imprecise. And I've been playing this for like 3 days now, and I've never got to a point where I can do it without looking at it, without thinking, which is just such a such a disappointment with this kind of game, because I want to just be quickly doing things, and it's like I have to stop. There's so many times where I've accidentally tapped the thumbstick and then selected the wrong thing. It's all like little stuff, but it makes a big difference with this kind of game. That's one of the, I think the big differences in terms of the way you play it. I think the other thing is, I mean, first off, not to just focus on the negatives, this is City Skylines. Like, pretty much everything from the base game. I mean, I played a lot of the base game. I could be misremembering things, or, haven't played certain parts that aren't present. But as far as I can tell, like, most of the features from the base game are here. You've got the same road tools. You've got different size roads. You've got zoning, the police, health, budgeting, taxes, education, kind of all of the menu systems. A lot of the kind of very core elements of this game are here. That's like the good part. And that's kind of what we were talking about with that simulation,
Yeah, I think this is so, like, just to touch on what you were saying first, I totally agree with you. I think the UI is like really, really finicky, and like there's even things like where it's like, so you go into a sub menu and then it's like, okay, you don't need this menu. You have to press B to go back, but it doesn't even have that VR thing of usually showing you where the B button is. So I'm like,
Yep,
which
totally.
hand is
Which one
that,
is
and
which one is
one of the
B?
two face buttons is B?
And also,
So
why is the B button not on the controller that I'm like? Why is the
yeah,
back button not the same controller as the one I'm selecting menus with? What?
so there's that disconnect to it. There's also the idea that, like you're saying now, it is cities skylines in VR. So I think there is, I don't want to do the thing where you just compare it to Little Cities all review, but there's definitely more to it. It's a more intricate game than Little Cities.
Yeah.
Little Cities exclusively works on a grid-based system, whereas this allows you to be finer with the laying
Yeah.
of roads and
You can
everything.
go
You can put in
wild.
curved roads and everything like that. But then
Mhm.
there's also like 6 different types of roads you could build, like big roads, small
Yeah.
roads, gravel roads. And to me, that's like
So
when we're
unnecessary.
talking about it's unnecessary when we're talking about like giving you only just a smaller area than you would have in a normal Cities game on
Yeah.
PC. You're only
Yeah.
getting a smaller area to build, so you've kind of simplified some of that. And
And
I
haven't
understand the
simplified the
ambition
options.
to I understand the
Yeah.
ambition to fit a whole Cities game into VR. But if it was up to me, I would have been like totally been like, okay, well, let's also cut back on some of these features
Yep.
because we just need this to be concise and comprehensive and make sense, especially because we're on the Quest platform,
Yeah.
and the kind of like faster, more instant play style is a better option, I think.
Yeah, and I think too, like even just one of the things that I've said in the review that I'm writing is that this has a tutorial that's about 10 minutes, and
Yep.
then the tutorial actually doesn't really cover most of this game.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because I remember seeing Fast Travel talking about this being like there's a heavy tutorial process. It's really not. It's about 10 minutes, and the odd thing is that in the original game on City Skylines, you have the toolbar at the bottom, and so there is a tutorial you can play in that game. But even if you don't have that, if you hover over, as you said, road with 4 lanes or whatever,
Yeah.
it would often say you can use this to do this, or there's a different type
Yeah.
of hospital, and it goes this hospital is better at doing this, or this park will boost happiness in this area, and you get an idea of what they do to how they function with your city. But that's completely missing from this. So if someone was new to the game, as far as I can tell, I haven't seen anything. Maybe there's
Mm.
some hidden menu, I don't know, but I can't see anything to suggest that like I started
Yeah, I
playing
haven't
this, and
seen
even I
anything.
played the original game, and I was like, hang on, I can place this like a park down. I know it kind of you can kind of guess it, but you kind of also go, if someone was new to this, like the genre, the series, whatever, like they go, what does
Yeah.
putting a park down here mean? Why would I use a one-way road over a two-way road? Do I need to manage traffic? Is that's the other thing. Like I don't I've does it ever get bad enough in this game that I need to be thinking about the roads that seriously? Because in the
Yeah.
other game, it was you'd have 5 blocks of land and
Mm.
huge traffic systems. I don't think there's gonna be enough cars in this for that to matter. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I haven't got to that point yet in any of the maps I've played. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's like there's this very admirable thing to have fit this big expansive
totally.
game into it, right? But
Mhm.
because of that, it almost, to your point, it almost feels unfinished a bit. Like the
Yeah.
tutorial is the most unfinished feeling thing of it, because I started playing
Yeah.
it and I don't have City Skylines experience. And so when it said you finished the tutorial, I was like, but all I've
I
done
don't know
is
how to do
lay a couple
anything.
of bits of road and put a water
Yeah.
tower in. I
Uh-huh.
need you to be with me for like an hour so that
Yeah.
I can get through like the first couple of months or years or whatever of being the mayor of this city.
Yeah. And I
And
think
well, to expand on that as well is
mm,
I know this was something you're probably going to bring up, but this does the it does the civilization thing of it. It's not like you have a set campaign to try and complete. You literally just have the 9 different maps, and you just
yeah.
choose to start building on whichever one you want to do, and then just
Mhm.
start building your city, and that's cool. But there's not much direction in it. Whereas again, Little Cities is like you need to level up each of your individual cities to unlock
Yeah.
later levels going on. And that I
It's
think
just a bit
gives
strange
the
to me.
casual player, yeah, it
Yeah.
gives the casual player a
It's
bit more to focus on,
yeah,
and I think this forgets about the casual player
totally.
too
And it's
much.
like, but I also just don't think it offers very much for the. I think that's the weird thing is it forgets the casual player and doesn't really offer anything compelling in my eyes for the like hardcore simulator player. Because
Right.
what we've talked about before is basically, I think, I don't see any reason for anyone who is like looking for a hardcore sim game of this scale to play this version. Because the other thing is the visuals. I mean, you kind of can't see it on the screen here, but man, they are not good. It's really, you can just tell that the Quest
Mm.
can't run this game. Like, as in a game of this scale. It certainly runs, but like every building in this, every building you look at it doesn't show up on the footage, but in the quest, it's like jaggy with the edges. So the whole city has this kind of mushy, jittery, shimmery effect to it. For the first little bit too, I felt almost nauseated by it because I was like, my eyes can't land on anything because everything is so lacking detail. Everything is so it's really rough. And the lighting is like even there's weird things like it gets really dark at night when you'll see some night footage in a bit. I think it gets really dark and it's hard to see the city because there's no street lights because they've removed the street lights, and so it's only the lights from the buildings. And like
But there's
that's
no
not
streetlights in the entire game.
no, there's no streetlights.
Oh my
I
God.
realized this because I was like, "Why is this so dark?" And then I
Dangerous
was like,
place
"Oh,
to
maybe
live."
it's because I was like, maybe it's because I'm playing on a level that's because this footage here is sandbox mode basically."
Yep.
And I was like, maybe because I'm only using the small roads. I believe in Skylines there was a thing of like, as you got bigger roads, there's more streetlights. But then I'm putting down like 4-lane, medium, large roads here, and there's no streetlights on them.
Yeah.
And when it
That's
gets
crazy.
midnight dark, it's hard to see the map because the only light comes from the buildings.
Yeah, you don't have any of the icons saying there's no electricity in that area, so that's not what it is. It's
And
just
that's the other thing. It's this is entirely missing like a notification system that all sim games like this have, being like, blah blah has said, there's no water and we need water. It has those little icons that flash, but again, if you're a casual player and you get to a point where you're kind of like, hang on, what do I do next? Because my city's kind of vaguely expanding, but what do I need to do to make the population bigger? There's zero. It's missing like
help for
some
that.
really core features from the base game, even though this is kind of has a lot of that stuff. It's also missing like I think there's also no autosave as far as I can tell. There's no way to rename your city, which is like kind of bizarre because it's not an important thing, but it's like was definitely there in the original game. You can't even name the save file. So if you have multiple cities on the same map, they're all going to have the same name, unless maybe I haven't done 2 on the same map, but I'm presuming it's like, I just kind of go, why can't I name a save file? Why can't I name the city? Why are there no streetlights? There's lots of little things like that you just kind of,
And
yeah.
I think to your point about the visuals, that this really is what encapsulates it for me, is when I've been playing it and I've built like a certain zone and then I've zoomed right down to see the actual construction of the zone.
Yes.
There is a lot of really incredible little details going into it. It feels like they have actually taken the actual animations from Skylines or whatever and put it onto Quest 2. And I'm looking at it thinking,
And you can't see it most of the time.
That is amazing. But because you've gone to that level of fidelity and you've been so adamant on keeping it the traditional Skylines experience, that's why when you're then zooming out, the whole quest system and visual system is going, oh my God, I've got to like try and render all of this, and there's pop in here and there and everything like that.
Definitely.
And it's kind of, it's so funny to think we were like, oh man, how unfortunate for Little Cities that these are releasing at the same time. But I actually now think it's how unfortunate for Cities VR that, first of all, Little Cities came out, which is a game that smartly designed its visuals around the platform so that actually works. And then, yeah, sure, it simplified the gameplay, but in doing so, the game feels finished and has. I should say, we're only talking off the preview build of Little Cities. I've only played up to what is embargoed from a couple of weeks ago. And then, but then on the other side of it as well, you've got the comparisons to City Skylines, which you're saying are like, yeah, that game is so much more in depth, technically proficient, and everything like that. That the benefit of doing all of this in VR isn't enough right now compared to what you lose,
totally.
essentially, right?
I think too, it's that thing with having played Little Cities, as you said. It's like, to me, that was actually the levels I played, I was sitting down in an armchair just like casually, because the other thing is it's isometric. It's super enjoyable, casual experience, but it is like, it has got some kind of depth to it, I guess, a little bit, not, from what I played, not much, but not like this, at least in terms of, management. But it's just like, I don't know. I've lost my train of thought. You take over.
Well, it's just a really fascinating thing to me because I actually, even though we've been talking about the UI and how finicky it is, I don't think it's that bad. I don't think moving around the world with the kind of thumbstick and doing the hover thing is that bad or terrible. It's definitely
It's
not
not terrible. It's
perfect.
just, to me, it's kind of like it offers. I think the thing is that there's having played the original game and enjoying it on PC, I just go, okay, so this isn't really immersive because it doesn't look very good. And one of the cool things about playing the original game is that you see the city really rise
Yeah,
up in a way that you don't get in a game like Little Cities. It's very like isometric and small scale. You
yeah,
really can build this expansive, huge city that looks visually amazing, and the lights are stunning and it looks cool. And there's none of that in this because it kind of just looks muddy and jaggy, and also the pop in. Oh my god! If you
yeah.
move
Like
your
you can see it
head,
there.
it's yeah, it's everywhere. Um, so you don't get any of that satisfaction of the visuals, and also because Little Cities is isometric, you're looking kind of at the city at this correct angle. This very much feels like the PC view. You can't adjust the angle of the
Mm,
map or this height. You can go at this level or the lower street level, which essentially is
yeah,
useless for city planning. And this level always feels like a little bit too far away because everything's kind of
yeah.
jaggy and far away, and I don't know, and you have
It
to crane. I'm always looking down too. It's like straining your neck almost because you're looking. If you look too far, there's the foveated rendering. If you're looking at this part of the screen, there's
yeah,
the giant thing of foveated rendering. So you have to look in the middle. So you kind of have to look down, and
yeah.
that's uncomfortable to play for a long time. So I just kind of go, why would anyone, if you're looking for that like intense city simulation, why would you play this instead of just going to play the PC game?
Yeah,
Um, if you don't want that
because
serious experience, you would play Little Cities or something. Like I don't see
yeah,
where this fits in. Basically,
I know exactly what you mean, and that's kind of what I'm getting at is that like I don't think the UI and stuff is terrible, but
no,
also because Little Cities is there just so much better showing how it's
mm,
done. That's where the real
yeah,
pain point is for me. Like Little Cities, the movement in it is so much more seamless and immersive. You literally do like the moving your arms far and apart thing to scale
yeah,
up and down straight away, and it feels really, really, really seamless. This really does feel like they've taken the mouse and keyboard controls and tried to like ram them on top of the
yeah.
touch controller as much as they
Everything
possibly
like
can.
everything about this to me almost feels like it's a mod of the PC version, even though it's not a
Oh,
port.
that's a good way to put
It's
it.
like if you had told me this was like a fan made mod, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense because everything's dialed down to like zero, and
Mm,
you know it has that kind of feel about it. It you feel kind of disconnected too from the. There's something about it where I just don't really feel connected to this world, like I'm in it. It feels like
yeah,
whereas I could keep making so many Little Cities comparisons. It's unavoidable. But there's little things that fly next to you and planes that go through the play area, and things that make me feel grounded and part of the world.
mm,
Whereas this, I feel like I'm playing a PC game looking down on the screen almost, even though
yeah,
it's 3D and like in VR. It's just
yeah.
yeah. It's a very difficult one because it's wedged between a comparison with the original game and this other game that's very
Yeah.
similar to it in
I
genre. So
definitely, I definitely want to play more of it. I definitely want to get like a proper good city up and going because, like you said, like this is a. I would say we're calling this a review discussion. You probably want to still play a little bit more. I definitely want
yeah.
to play a little bit more. Um, but yeah, I think I like it a bit more than you, even though I completely understand
Mm,
everything you're saying. I think the big thing for I honestly do think it, and I like you said, I don't want to make all the little cities comparisons, but it's really hard not to. I honestly think if Little Cities wouldn't be coming out in the same period, and I hadn't played Little Cities, I would be far more positive on this. But
yeah,
there
probably.
is just an example of something that's scaled properly for the platform, designed intuitively for the platform, right next to this, and that's really
Mhm,
unfortunate. This is
mhm.
very much take a really cool hardcore game and try and cram it onto Quest, whereas Little Cities is how would a city sim work on Quest? You know?
Yeah, and also not to be a negative Nancy, but the only thing I do wanna stress, because maybe I haven't
Mm,
stressed enough in this video, is even if you take away all the Little Cities interaction,
yeah,
design for the platform discussion, this game does look pretty bad on Quest. I hate to say it, but
yeah,
it looks pretty bad. Even if we had played this by itself and we're like, "Oh, yeah," like, build the roads, great, whatever. I would still be mentioning the visuals in the review and being like, oh, it looks pretty.
Yeah.
It performs well. Like there's a few drops in frames and whatever, but it performs decently in terms of like frame rate, which is, I guess, good, as far as I can tell. But visually, man, it's not, you know, yeah, it's not pretty. I think that needs to be kind of emphasized because, you know, you can see it in the trailers, but it almost looks worse in the headset, to be honest, I think.
So that is Little Cities. No, that's not. Wow,
Cities-
that is
Cities
Cities VR out
Yeah.
today on the Quest 2, potentially coming to other platforms later down the line. I think hopefully that will help with the whole visual situation at the very least.
Imagine
if
this
that ends
bad
up
boy on
happening.
a Quest 1. Imagine what that'd look like. Just a
The
pixel.
Quest 1 just blowing up immediately.
Yeah, it's just a changing pixel, one color.
That takes us to the end of this week's VR Gamescast. Thanks so much for listening. Please consider becoming a member, potentially buying a t-shirt with our very cool logo. That sounded far too sarcastic. Below. And we'll be back next week with, I don't know what's happening next week. Maybe we'll just have a lovely discussion about something.
Yeah, just, you know.
As always, Harry, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Have a good week in VR. We'll see you soon.
Have a good one, guys. See you next week.